Recently, I've seen a lot of hate on Trevor Lawrence. And I mean, a lot. Borderline people acting like he's a bust just because he hasn't lived up to some pretty unrealistic expectations. But is he actually bad? Or have we just been expecting him to be perfect in a not so perfect situation? As a lifelong Jaguars fan, I've truly seen what bad quarterback play looks like. Don't worry, Blake. I still love you. Anyways, I've got some thoughts, so let's break it down. Trevor Lawrence came out of Clemson with some pretty unprecedented hype. As a freshman, he led Clemson to a national title and was widely considered to be the #1 overall pick in the NFL draft whenever he decided to come out. Already drawing some comparisons to Andrew Luck, to Peyton Manning, earning the generational tag. He would go on to only lose 2 games in his collegiate career, one in the national championship the next year against possibly the most talented college football team we've ever seen, and the second one coming in the semifinals the following year. After going #1 overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars and a few ups and downs early in his career, the 25-year-old fifth-year quarterback has the term mid or bust or average at best being thrown around his name. So is Trevor Lawrence bad, or do people just think that he's bad? And if they do, why would they think that? A big reason for this has to do with the Jacksonville Jaguars in themselves. When people come out of college, they can't choose who they get to be drafted by. So after earning the #1 overall pick, being the worst team in the NFL, the Jacksonville Jaguars selected Trevor Lawrence as their franchise quarterback. Now, besides a miracle playoff berth in 2022 in Trevor's second season, which we'll get to soon, the Jaguars have been bad and irrelevant his entire career. This naturally leads a lot of people to not care about the Jaguars and definitely not watch them. They haven't been good, there's not really any other stars on the team, and they play no primetime games. So the average NFL fan who doesn't watch every single game will probably just see a Jaguars loss to the Texans, Trevor throws 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, and they lose, and say, the Jaguars lost, Trevor was bad, Trevor must be the reason why the Jaguars lost, and call Trevor a bad quarterback. Obviously, the average NFL fan isn't going to watch every single game, nor does anyone expect them to. However, we are really quick to label quarterbacks good or bad just by looking at a stat line and if their team is good. Pretty natural in such a quarterback-centric league that because the quarterback has so much influence on the game, if a team loses or is bad, then that quarterback must be the sole reason, let alone that there could be dozens of other factors that may contribute to their win-loss record as well. There also is a little bit of a human psychology note into this if you really think about it. There's actually a psychological phrase called Schadenfreude, which is a German word that means joy from failure. And it's that secret satisfaction that you get when you watch people that are supposed to succeed end up failing, and it makes you feel better about your own life. As if to say, well, I mean, he had great expectations for his life and he failed, so I feel better about failing the expectations I had for myself. Obviously, this isn't everyone, but I do feel like there is an element of being a hater that you want to see people fail. And usually hating other people or negative criticism can have a lot more to do with us than the actual person that we're putting the hate onto. But what I really think on why people think that Trevor is bad is I think people are just confused. Confused on why such a highly touted prospect, someone with so much talent and so much hype coming into the NFL, has failed and not met expectations as someone as Trevor has. How someone named the next Peyton Manning and the next Andrew Luck, a generational QB, going into his 5th season, not even ranked among the top 15 quarterbacks in most lists I see, and entering almost no hype. Nobody talks about Trevor Lawrence, and if they do, it's usually piggybacking off of Travis Hunter, and if Trevor Lawrence can just keep up and maybe right the ship after his last few seasons of failure. Almost as if to say, if it's 4 years in and we still don't know if he's good or bad, or he's not a top 10 quarterback, then he must be a bust, right? Well, let's take a little bit of a deep dive past superficial statements or human psychology and get into some real criticism of his play, along with maybe some facts that back up that it might not be all his fault. And then I'll give my own perspective, having watched every single game and every single throw that he's made. So let's find out. Is Trevor Lawrence good? Is he bad? Is he mid? Let's see. So there's no debate that Trevor has not been the elite quarterback that we all thought he was going to be coming out of college. However, there could be some things that may back up that it's not all his fault. Let's look at the real negative criticism that a lot of people that actually watch the games and a lot of analysts say about him that I can't really argue that much with. Probably the biggest knock on any quarterback is turnovers. And Trevor has happened to lead the league in turnovers since being drafted in 2021. Now, it's not as clear-cut as you think, as when we think of quarterback turnovers, we usually think of interceptions. We think of Jameis Winston, 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, gunslinger, throwing into triple coverage, bad decision-making. Now, Trevor does have a lot of those moments. However, what really skew his numbers to lead the league in turnovers since 2021 is his lost fumbles. He has 22 lost fumbles since entering the league, by far the most of any player at his position. And I've seen that firsthand watching the games. It's not because Trevor is not athletic or he just can't run with the ball or has small hands, nothing like that. In fact, he's actually a really good runner and very mobile. But he'll just have these inexplicable moments where he just drops the ball at the worst time, or maybe he gets unfortunately blindsided a few more times than you would like and fumbles the ball and we lose it. Well, those are things that he needs to clean up if he wants to be a good quarterback, a franchise guy, possibly even elite. Now, another inconsistency with his game that a lot of people say is that he has some inaccuracy issues, specifically with short to medium range. Nobody can argue that he has a beautiful deep ball and has plenty of arm strength to make every throw on the field, but in the 5 to 20 yard range, it's pretty obvious that he has a hard time controlling his fastball when he needs to, which has led to a lot of turnovers or a lot of stalled out drives. Another thing is bad mechanics and footwork that he still really hasn't improved on since his days in Clemson. And we'd like to see quarterbacks when they reach the NFL can improve any kind of bad mechanical flaws that they've had since college. However, Trevor still has yet to maybe develop out of those flaws that people had problems with in his college game. And probably one of the most important ones is his decision making, which it's kind of hard to really judge if a quarterback has bad decision making, but when you see balls being forced into windows they don't need to be forced into, and abandoning clean pockets when he could have just sat in the pocket and made the throw from there, those can definitely be detriments to his game. But it's also something that's good about Trevor is that he's always looking to make that highlight play. Some people might look at it as a negative, as he's careless with the football. Some people look at it as a positive, as he's not afraid to make the daring play in order to set his team up to win. However, many of those decisions have backfired for him, and that's why a lot of people can label him as a quarterback that has bad decision making. Another one that I notice a lot is that he will definitely miss throws that he has no business missing. For someone with as much talent and has played as much as him, he definitely can miss some quote-unquote routine throws that a lot of other quarterbacks would make in their sleep. And this kind of inconsistency is a big reason why we're here where we are today. And recently there's been a lot, especially in the past year, that he's a quote-unquote one-read QB. Basically saying that if the first read isn't open, he's going to either take off and run or try to make a play another way instead of sitting in the pocket and going through his progressions. Now, this one's kind of hard to say because we don't exactly know what scheme he's running, what the play call is, and what his instructions are. In the Doug Peterson system that he's been playing with the past 3 years, there could be a lot of times where Doug Peterson's in his ear saying, if first read's open, take off and run, or first read's open, throw it away. And also the state of the Jaguars' offensive line during this time has been a big reason why he may be a little jumpy in the pocket and leave before going to his 2 and 3, which we'll get into later. And then another criticism that I've heard a lot that I think is just totally not true at all is criticism about Trevor's personality and leadership. When he was drafted, he did an interview where he talked about that not everything in his life is about football, that he does care about other things, mainly his friends, his family, which is great and all. We're all for a work-life balance. However, a lot of NFL fans and a lot of NFL execs want their quarterbacks to be absolute psychos who do nothing but live, eat, sleep, football. Which in Trevor's case, that's just not him, and that's okay. But people started questioning his dedication to the sport. Is he someone that's going to put in the work in to be great? Is he someone that actually cares if he wins or loses? Is he someone that actually wants to play? And a lot of this has come back up recently. People questioning, well, we knew coming out that there was a little bit of concern that he might not love football as much as others. And rumors spreading around that Trevor doesn't want to put in the work, he doesn't care about football. Which I think, if you follow Trevor Lawrence's career in the NFL, is absolutely false. And I'll just give you one example. In 2024, Trevor Lawrence got concussed by, what was his name? How do I not know this? The Texans linebacker, Azeez Al-Shaair. Azeez Al-Shaair cheap shot at Trevor Lawrence while he was trying to make a slide, and he laid there concussed on the ground and was taken out of the game and was out for the season, also with a shoulder injury. If Trevor wasn't dedicated to football, wouldn't a scary moment like that make you never want to play again? Make you maybe reconsider if football is something that you want in your life? He's already received the big contract by this time. This is actually his second concussion in 2 years. If he has one more, there's some serious concerns on his future in life. Don't you think that would be enough if you really didn't care about football to hang it up and call it a career? But sources have said that he's been working even harder this offseason to get back healthy and to learn Liam Cohen's new offense. So I just think that whole he doesn't care or his leadership and everything is a bunch of crap. Now let's go into some reasons why it's not all Trevor's fault that he's been in this situation or that the Jaguars have been as bad as they are. Number one being that the Jacksonville Jaguars offensive line has ranked consistently in the bottom third every single year in his career. Any quarterback that has a bad offensive line is going to look worse. They don't have enough time in the pocket to go through the progressions. Their clock is constantly being sped up, so they can't see the field fully, and it can lead to making some bad decisions or leaving some clean pockets early and missing throws and missing plays. Another thing is that the Doug Pederson offense, and his play design specifically, has been labeled by many as archaic in the early 2020s compared to other schemes. 2023 and 2024 are a lot different than 2017 when he won the Super Bowl with the Eagles and everyone was talking about his new offense. Times have changed and people have caught on, and you can see it in the Doug Pederson era. The offense definitely looked clunky and stale at times. Not a lot of motion, not a lot of wide receivers open, focusing way too much on wide receiver screens in the quick game to fill the holes of a bad run game and a bad offensive line. The next thing is really eye-opening, and it's that the Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiving core, including tight ends, has led the NFL in drops every single season that Trevor has been the starting NFL quarterback. And as a Jaguars fan who's watched every game, I can definitely remember a few back-breaking drops that have led directly to losses. My fourth reason it's not all on Trevor is actually his whole rookie year in general. We'll get into it later, but Urban Meyer was an absolute disaster. And to start your career off in the NFL with such a toxic coach as that, it's a miracle that Trevor is even still in the NFL after what he had to go through his rookie year. And the same goes for the entire staff and players who were on that 2021 team. I mentioned it earlier before, but over the last 2 seasons, Trevor has had to deal with 6 different injuries. 1 to his left ankle, 1 to his right knee, 2 on his left shoulder, and 2 concussions. Now, players get injured all the time, but Trevor has been known to fight through injury and still make his way back to the starting lineup, even if it looks like he got bent up like a pretzel. But this causes him not to come back 100%, and this can lead to even more inaccuracy and maybe bad decision making. And maybe him just trying to do too much and be the hero, which leads to turnovers, which leads to losses. And lastly, he has had a constant scheme change 3 out of the last 4 years that he has been in the NFL. Now, the last 3 years, he's had the same coach and offensive system. However, in 2023, right before the season started, Doug Pederson decided to make Press Taylor the offensive coordinator. And we all saw how that turned out again. Now, this should all be enough for me to make a decision, right? We looked at some negatives, we looked at some positives. However, I feel like there's something missing, and that's the story of Trevor Lawrence. The story of the Jacksonville Jaguars of the past 4 seasons. If I were to leave everything out like that, I'd probably say Trevor Lawrence has some talent, is good, was put into a bad situation, probably just okay with maybe the potentially to be better with a better system and better players around him. Or this might just be who he is and the Jaguars really need to support him if they want to win. But to me, there's something deeper here. And to do that, we're going to have to take this season by season in order to get a real verdict on this one. All right. If I'm going to have to relive these memories, I'm going to need a beer. So in 2020, the Jacksonville Jaguars were the worst team in the NFL and earned the #1 pick. Oh gosh, that's a lot of fun. Sorry, amateur hour over here. My goodness. That's good though. Just a little more. Anyways, it just so happened that Trevor Lawrence, the #1 prospect at the time, was coming out at the same time. Jaguars fans were celebrating everywhere. Finally, we got our Peyton Manning. Finally, we got our Tom Brady. Jacksonville Jaguars are going to win a Super Bowl and consistently be in the playoff race year after year after year. It's our time. We suffered long enough. But sometimes things just don't work out that way. Unfortunately for the Jacksonville Jaguars fan base, and unfortunately for Trevor Lawrence, the Jacksonville Jaguars hired NFL legend Urban Meyer to be their coach to lead the franchise into new heights. Oh, how wrong we were. Urban Meyer is considered by many to be the worst head coach of all time in the NFL. Even worse than Bobby Petrino, who famously left the Falcons in the middle of the season without telling anyone. Urban Meyer forgot people's names, benched star players for no to little reason at all, left practices early just because he felt like it, was verbally abusive and disrespectful to coaches and players, making it a totally toxic work environment. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, he hired a known racist coach. He tried out Tim Tebow at tight end. Oh yeah, and he also went viral on a Thursday night loss to the Bengals, in which he decided to go out drinking at his own bar in Ohio and create a huge distraction for the team. And there's more. It was obvious that he did not care about coaching the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it showed on the field. We had an awful scheme, awful team building, no motivation for the players given the coach, and Trevor Lawrence just fending for himself out there, trying to find his feet in the NFL, no real guidance, no support around him, and no way to succeed at all. A lot of people straight up just scrap this year from their memory and just say that Trevor's second year was actually his rookie year. The Jaguars' leading receivers that year was an aging Marvin Jones Jr., Laquan Treadwell, Laviska Shenault, Tavon Austin, and Jamal Agnew, who was actually a corner who switched to playing wide receiver, and he actually became one of the Jaguars' best wide receivers that year. Yes, that's right, a corner became one of the Jaguars' best wide receivers. That's how bad they were. Urban Meyer ended up going 2-11 before he kicked the can. And when I mean kicked the can, I mean he kicked the kicker and got fired. Yes, he kicked the kicker. It was fun while it lasted, Herbs, wasn't it? The Jaguars earned the number 1 pick again that year, and a lot of doubt was going into year 2 for Trevor Lawrence. Can he come back from that? Is it even possible to go through so much in your rookie year and still have a successful career? Well, we find out soon enough. In 2022, the Jaguars hired Doug Peterson, who had quite the resume, being from Philly and winning their first Super Bowl. So optimism was pretty high that he might be able to right the ship and clean up the mess that Urban Meyer had left. However, things didn't start out so well. The Jags started out 2-6. Some really bad, close losses, and a lot of them you could put the blame on Trevor for some of his early mistakes. Specifically, some costly turnovers at the goal line that lost a close one to Houston and Denver early in the year. But there was still some progression from last year, and they did look better overall as a team, and Trevor looked better as a quarterback. What was going to be seen as probably just a rebuilding year, maybe get things back on track, and next year will be the chance to be competitive, ended up becoming a magical run the likes Jags fans have never seen, and the likes that the NFL rarely sees. The last half of 2022, Trevor flipped the switch. He led multiple game-winning drives and leading the Jaguars to a 6-2 record to win the division, and was ranked top 10 in many statistical categories, showing the world that Trevor Lawrence had arrived. It all came into a climax in the 2022 wildcard round on Saturday night, in one of the greatest games that Jaguars fans will always remember, when Trevor Lawrence, after throwing 4 interceptions in the first half, not all of them was his fault, to lead a 27-0 comeback and 4 touchdowns in the second half of the Chargers game in order to win in one of the greatest playoff games in NFL history and one of the greatest comeback performances in playoff history. It was clear-cut Trevor Lawrence was the guy. And though he was a big reason why the Jaguars got into that hole to begin with, the fact that he climbed out of it and ended up making one of its best games of his career showed a lot to NFL fans, and especially the Jaguars fans, that we have our guy. After losing to the Chiefs in the 2022 divisional round at Arrowhead, which, come on, everyone loses to the Chiefs at Arrowhead in the 2020s, except for Joe Burrow. A lot of optimism was going in for the Jags and for Trevor Lawrence going into 2023. However, what would happen in 2023 would spark an entirely new kind of heartbreak, a kind of heartbreak that Jags fans had probably never experienced up to that point. 2023 started off with a lot of optimism for Trevor and the Jags. They started off going 8-3 and actually had the second best record in the entire NFL, only behind the Super Bowl winning Kansas City Chiefs since week 12 of the year prior, which is something that Jaguars fans are definitely not used to. The offense was still a little bit shaky, and even though Trevor wasn't playing up to that 2022 standard that he set for himself, the Jags were still winning, and Trevor was still looking pretty good, still like a top 10 quarterback. Now, that clunkiness I was talking about was due to the fact that Doug Peterson decided to change play callers from himself to offensive coordinator Press Taylor at the time, a move that was left criticized by a lot, as this is the same exact thing that happened in Philadelphia that eventually ended up getting him fired. Couple that with a lot more dropped balls, as I mentioned earlier, and you still had an offense that just seemed like to stall out at points, where last year this seemed to elevate. The Jaguars at one point were the #1 seed in the AFC, and with playoff implications on the line, and #1 seed implications on the line, the Jaguars hosted a Monday Night Football game in front of the Cincinnati Bengals, led by backup Hall of Fame quarterback Jake Brownlee. Everyone in Duval was excited to watch an easy win, and to celebrate the Jags locking up the #1 seed for the first time in my life. The game started off kind of weird. Trevor was playing great, the offense was scoring. However, Hall of Fame quarterback Jake Browner and a pair of two backup running backs were absolutely shredding our defense, and Trevor needed to do more to step it up. And he was. However, all that came to a halt in the third quarter when Trevor got bent up like a pretzel, ended up going out of the game. This was a shock to many watching, and a heartbreaker for a lot of Jags fans, thinking that Trevor might be out for the year. Thankfully he wasn't, and he was able to play the next week. However, the Jaguars also lost their top wide receiver Christian Kirk in that game. From there, things just started to spiral. It felt like the Jaguars were just trying to hold on for dear life as injuries started piling up for Trevor and the Jags, and losses started to pile up as their first place schedule started to catch up with them. They ended up running into some of the hottest teams just at the right time, but just at the wrong time for the Jags. Meanwhile, the Houston Texans were taking advantage of their last place schedule, along with phenomenal rookie season from quarterback CJ Stroud and rookie head coach DeMeco Ryans. This all led to the Jags losing out and finishing the season 9-8 after a devastating loss to the 5-11 Tennessee Titans with nothing on the line. This ending their season and knocking them out of the playoff race, while the Texans ended up going 10-7 and winning the division. Now, this was also the season where injuries really started to pile up for Trevor Lawrence. He had a left ankle sprain, he sprained his right knee during a home game against the Colts early in the year, suffered a left shoulder injury, and was dealing with a concussion. All of this led to not terrible play by Trevor Lawrence, but definitely not 100%, and him trying to stick it out and be there for his team and play through his injuries ended up costing the Jags with some poor play later down the line. Couple that along with a defense that was letting everyone score on them on every single drive, and you get the most heartbreaking season that I can remember. The odds were just too much for Trevor, and though he wasn't playing terrible, the obstacles were just too great for him to overcome a struggling back half season schedule and the team not playing up to their potential. And the Jaguars couldn't even muster up a single win while he was on the field after that Monday Night Football game. After that devastation, a long off-season started, and into 2024 that we went. The 2024 Jaguars had tons of expectation, at least in Jacksonville. Around the league, people probably wrote them off already because, well, they're the Jaguars. However, Jags fans were angry. I was angry at the way the last year ended. We all wanted blood. We wanted revenge. Houston didn't deserve the division win. We did. We're the better team, and we'll show you this year. There was blood in the water, and there was juice in Jacksonville. However, there was no juice in the team, and no juice in Doug Peterson, as a make-or-break season for the Jaguars and Doug Peterson ended up being the worst season that I can ever remember being a Jags fan. And I've seen some pretty bad seasons. This one was by far the worst, given the expectation, given the talent level, given the fact that since we drafted Trevor Lawrence, I thought the days of the early 2010s and late 2000s were over. I thought drafting your franchise quarterback would be something that you always have a set floor where you're competing for the playoffs. This year, that did not happen, and it was unacceptable. As soon as Travis Etienne fumbled in the third quarter while walking into the end zone against the Miami Dolphins, and with the Dolphins end up coming back and beating the Jaguars in the ultimate here we go again scenario ever, I knew the season was done. Followed that up with the Week 2 opener in which there was no juice on the sidelines, no energy, and a lackluster performance against a very bad Cleveland Browns team, and the season was in the dump. And during these stretch of games, from about weeks 2 through 5, Trevor Lawrence probably played his worst football since his rookie year. I remember specifically in the game against the Houston Texans, I believe week 4, where he was just missing wide open receivers down the field that would have won them the games. But something was wrong, something was off. You could tell the relationship between him and Doug Peterson was not going well, and Trevor was not comfortable out there, and neither was anyone else. sporting the league's worst defense. Play calling was stale, the Jaguars had no energy as a team, and no help was coming on the way. And besides the emergence of Brian Thomas Jr. as a clear number one receiver on his rookie year, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. There was no run game, no defensive turnovers, the O-line was the worst it's been in Trevor's career, and the Jaguars were last in the league in time of possession, making it feel like every single drive that the offense was on the field was a win or loss scenario. If we didn't get a first down here, the other team was just going to chew up the clock, score, and now we're down 3 touchdowns. It felt like everything was on Trevor's back to elevate a roster that was not living up to the potential. The Jaguars started off 2-7, and during a Sunday evening loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, Trevor hurt his left shoulder again. This would put him out until week 12 when he fought to come back to start in a home game against the Texans. That really didn't mean anything, the Jaguars season was over at that point, but you could tell Trevor wanted to be out there for his team. It was in that game where the cheap shot heard around America would spark endless debate on quarterback slides and whether or not it's okay if a quarterback slides too late, while Trevor laid there motionless, concussed on the ground, just trying to make a play for his teammates. But hey, yeah, he doesn't care about football, right? Trevor was out for the season, and the worst season I can ever remember as a Jacksonville Jaguars fan finally came to a close. Unfortunately, with more questions than answers. With the coach and the GM fired, tons of debate came up about Trevor Lawrence, if he's really the guy going forward. Is he good? Is he bad? Whose fault is it? Is he not living up to the potential? Is he just not a good QB? Or are the Jaguars really just that bad of an organization to make him look this bad? Well, let's get to my final thoughts and a verdict on if I think Trevor Lawrence is good or bad. After reliving the ups and downs of Trevor Lawrence's career, can I really say if he is a good or bad quarterback? As someone who has watched every single throw of Trevor Lawrence's career, and the development that he's shown since his rookie season and entering the NFL, along with what he has had at his disposal since entering the league, Trevor Lawrence has more than enough talent and tools to be an elite quarterback at the NFL level. He isn't an elite QB that can put the team on his back and carry his team to multiple Super Bowls and playoff wins every single year, maybe like everyone thought he would when he entered the league. Like every QB, he needs support around him and a good system. And actually this year, I believe he has it more than ever. I honestly think he is a really good quarterback, with the potential to even become a great quarterback, maybe even top 10 if his potential is truly maxed out. There are throws that he makes that I've seen that never get talked about, that only a handful of quarterbacks would even dare to throw. And there's even more that are just straight up dropped by his wide receivers. Maxing out that potential will be up to new head coach Liam Cohen. He's the one who helped establish Baker Mayfield's renaissance in Tampa and led to his best year as a pro. And Liam Cohen's loss in the Tampa Bay organization will not be unfelt. Along with the continued progression of wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. and a new weapon in Travis Hunter, I could very easily see this next upcoming year being a resurgence for Trevor Lawrence and a very good bounce back season. There are now some real pieces around Trevor where they could really make this work as long as the O-line keeps it up and as long as Trevor stays healthy. I'm confident that if all these things stay true, Trevor Lawrence can easily get back into the positive public eye and maybe get into that top 12 quarterback conversation, with the potential to even get into the top 10 if the Jaguars make some noise and even make the playoffs this year. My final verdict is this: Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback. However, he has flaws, and the Jacksonville Jaguars did nothing but make those flaws easier to see. If he was drafted to any other franchise, people watching this video who aren't Jaguars fans, if he was drafted to your franchise, Trevor Lawrence would easily be a top 10 quarterback, maybe even an elite quarterback if he went to a very good and established quarterback. Unfortunately, he was drafted to the Jacksonville Jaguars, a franchise that I love, but I can be very honest in saying that they have not handled this situation well at all, and Trevor Lawrence has every right to be mad at the Jaguars for how they've treated him and the little support that they have given him. So unfortunately, we're going into year 5 with Trevor Lawrence, and we still don't really know, is he the guy that's going to take the Jacksonville Jaguars to the promised land? I believe in Trevor, and I think he can. You can definitely win a Super Bowl with Trevor Lawrence, and you can do a whole lot worse in a franchise quarterback. But he still has to prove it on the field. And this year, a lot of people are saying is a make or break season to see if Trevor Lawrence really is that guy. I don't personally think that this year is the season to really tell all, since it's the first year in a new system, but we definitely have to see some progression after last year. Good news is that he's only 25 years old, which is kind of crazy to think about. It feels like he's been in the league for 10 years already. This is his 5th season, and he's got a long career ahead of him as long as he stays healthy. So in no way am I giving up on Trevor Lawrence. As a Jags fan, I believe in him, and I believe that he can still be a great quarterback. He just has to develop a little longer. In this video, I hope I was able to get some of my bias out of it. It's a little difficult, not going to lie, but there are some real negatives to Trevor's game, and I wanted to convey that first before going on a rampage defending him. I just wanted to point out that I think a lot of the hate and negative criticism has gotten just a little too far. I think a lot of people don't understand the big picture of why Trevor hasn't performed up to his expectations coming into the year. And I think if you were really to take a closer look and look at the whole story, you can understand that not a lot of quarterbacks in the history of the NFL would have thrived in what Trevor was given, especially early on in his career. And he still has had some really good moments where you can look at and say, it's there, we just have to tap into it. We just have to build a little bit around him. And I hope to God that the Jaguars can do it this year. I believe in Trevor, and so should you. All right, that was a long one. Thanks for watching. Hey, football season's coming up soon. Preseason's right around the corner. I'm going to be posting a lot more Jaguars content soon, but don't worry. If you're interested in more Japan stuff or stuff about cocktails, stuff like that is coming up soon. Next week, I'm going to have a video where I blind taste and rank all the whiskeys at my home bar, so check that out if you're interested. Or if you're interested in any other content relating to Japan, the Jaguars, or making drinks at home. Sometimes all three combined. Stay tuned, and I'll see you guys later.